form for them to fill out. Somebody asked me about the college, or not the, yeah, the college donation for kids for the tuition fees of $1,000. If we could have it on each one, enough here to give each student, because a lot of times the students don't always get them from school, or the counselors don't give them to them. Right. Well, that's a good, perfect example that at least these kids would at least get a copy of it for that. And then I also forgot to mention it to them, but it was mentioned to me also that they should have something on their desks here, and I think that next year that would be a good idea to do that. Okay, everybody, would you please, after the students all left, I think you all have to punch back in, so. Just hang on a minute.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Okay, we'll go to the airport.
The airport budget starts on page 289. On page 294 is their chart of employees. The airport's budgeted for 7 full-time employees and 1 part-time employee for 2014, the same as 2013. On page 295 is the summary of significant changes. The net levy after adjustments for the 2014 budget allocates $472,405 of levy to the airport. In the prior year, it was only $62,000.
Supervisor Wingren, did you have your Supervisor Widener?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have a question on page 295 where it talks about land rental, a $300,000 decrease based on the stored vehicles. Is that a contract number reduced by $300,000, or is that an estimate?
Peter Mall, the airport director, is here, but the vehicle renters are on a per vehicle per day basis, or they have been in the past, and Peter may want to comment on that.
Yep. There is no contracted number of vehicles that we've worked with Oshkosh Corp on that. It's just a matter of how many vehicles they can get on the airport versus how many are coming off for transport for delivery to the military. So.
Okay, so basically the $300,000 reduction is an estimate.
Correct. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Go to highway. I have no questions.
We'll move on to the highway budget. It's page 308.
Come back up, Supervisor Fari.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I might get an explanation, I'm looking at 295. You have capital equipment, an increase based on equipment upgrades and ARFF vehicle upgrades. I believe that's been identified, and correct me if I'm wrong, as the purchase of a part of that funds is for the purchase of a fire engine. Is that correct?
It's actually the fire suppression system on one of the vehicles. The one we want to replace on ARF 114. ARF stands for Airport Rescue and Firefighting. As the command vehicle, it's got a small amount of water and foam on board the truck. The vehicle itself is 20 years old. We're keeping that. All we want to do is retrofit the skid mount unit on the back of the vehicle. That fire suppression system is 40 years old.
Is that a foam system you want to go to?
Exactly. It's a foam system.
Thank you.
Peter, you also were going to ask for a change in the budget with regard to equipment. that was requested with regard to, farming?
Correct, yeah. What we're, I believe Supervisor Warnke has already
brought an amendment in for that.
for that amendment. Yeah, basically, what we want to do is take another step back and take another year to look at the whole operation, because the data we were receiving earlier this fall really didn't coincide with the numbers we were getting, and we were getting conflicting information. So rather than come to here and try to justify it, we want to make sure that we get our numbers correct, and we'll go from there. In the end, it may not be something we want to do either. So.
Supervisor Hardy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a question on the line on page 295 regarding promotions for the airport. You have an increase based on anticipated costs to promote airport land acquisition and social media costs. I'm wondering, is this for the land acquisition that we've already acquired or future land acquisition?
That's for the land we already acquired. We'll be doing some more promotions via advertising, via the web, via special events in order to attract some potential businesses to come to the airport and then build their business there.
Okay, so the promotions are to try to encourage businesses to rent
Correct.
space on the land. Okay, thank you.
Supervisor Eisen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Mull, could you share with the board and with the public a synopsis of this year's EAA, some highlights, and perhaps some impressive numbers, both attendance-wise and cash flow-wise? I think that this is a very important element in substantiating the kinds of dollars that we invest in our airport, as well as the progress on the construction of the business park, airport business park, and maybe even some feelers that we've acquired now that we do have land available. Could you bring us all up to date with that? I think that's an imperative when we're talking about the dollars that we invest in the airport and the justifications and the concerns of the supervisors.
My pleasure. This year's EA Air Venture went off beautifully, I guess is the best word I can describe it. Was, for the most part, uneventful, even though the military wasn't there. It does tend to attract a lot of people to the event with military aircraft. However, because of sequestration, none of the military or government aircraft were there. Yet they had, if my numbers are correct, about 500,000 people attend the event, which is about right for what a normal year would be. The aircraft attendance numbers were about even with what they've had in previous years, which is nothing really to sneeze at. We're still looking at about 10 to 12,000 aircraft on the airport during that 10-day period. And when I say a 10-day period, the event itself is 7 days, but people come in early, people stay late, so there's a great number of aircraft that stay on the airport during that time period. The last data I've seen from the EAA on their economic impact of the area, and this includes the entire county and the surrounding Fox Valley, is $111 million. That really brings in money toward for not just the airport in terms of fuel sales, revenue from landing fees for the commercial aircraft like the honor flight that came in for the veterans, but also for EAA, for the hotels, for restaurants, places like Target, Walmart, convenience stores like that, gasoline stations. I mean, the numbers are just mind-boggling when you figure out how much of an impact that makes to the area. What else can I say? The airport business park, my understanding is we've got 2 interested parties now that have approached either myself or Aero Innovate. Nothing's been accomplished yet. It's still in the talking stages, but there is a definite interest from two companies that we've been told of. We hope, in the next year to finalize the planning for the taxiway going into it from the airport into the property, and then be constructing the taxiway itself then in 2015. So that'll encourage a bit more interest, I think, in the property. That way we can start to fill it up quicker. We know it's a 10-year process, 20-year process. We're not going to get to businesses overnight, but we know that there's interest out there. So what else can I say? I know the city of Oshkosh is looking at some businesses too that are on their side of the road to fill the park. So definitely there is interest in it. So I think that was a good investment on the part of the county. So.
Thank you.
I just want to point out to the board that the city did secure the EDA grant of about $2 million, and that's being matched by money from the city. So it's possible that we may see stormwater, sewer, and streets going in or starting prior to the next EAA. So that may give us a real marketing opportunity by the next EAA if there's some infrastructure in, so that there's actually something to see that looks like a business park rather than just a farm field.
Supervisor Fari.
Thank
I'm sorry, Wingren first.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Peter, I'm just taking two examples here of promotions, I believe. One is for $25,000 to a multimedia corporation in Canada for something called the Aviators Season 4. So my question is, what is that and why Canada?
This is our what's the word I'm looking for? Our sponsorship of the Aviators TV. The company itself is in Canada. It's a Canadian company. They do the videos. However, one of the production managers is a tenant at Whitman Regional Airport in the terminal.
I mean, is this on regular TV or where is it?
It's on public television, not in Oshkosh though, not in Green Bay.
It's not on the Honey Boo Boo channel? Or?
No.
Okay. Just
No.
to be sure.
Yeah, not.
And the other one is, you have thousands of dollars paid to a Mark Communications,
Yeah.
Comvia, and there's one
Comavia.
February 10th, social media consulting for 2 days. And, no, that's wrong. I'm sorry. It is August 1st of this year. 2 days, consulting for 2 days, $1,450. Travel to Oshkosh, $350. Hotel expense in Oshkosh, $975.
Rob Mark is our social media consultant and our marketing consultant out of the Chicago area. We've had an agreement with him for a number of years, probably about 7 or 8 years now at this point. Every year he'll come to AirVenture, he'll stay in a hotel. We've tried to put him up in less expensive places, in homes too.
Well, where in Oshkosh is there a hotel that for 2 nights costs $975?
Well, actually, he was spending more time here. He was actually here for 4 days. He only charged us for 2 because
it
he's
says
also
very specifically 2 days.
2 days. Yeah, he charged us for 2 days of time, but he was here for 4 days during the AirVenture. 2 of the days someone else paid for. He paid for it on his own. So because he's doing work for other consultants for other companies at the same time he's doing for us. That's his business. So in the social media aspect, what he's doing for us is a lot of the work on our website, on Twitter accounts, on Facebook, posting what's happening on the airport on a
But the
weekly
bill
basis.
says 2 nights,
Right.
hotel expense, $975. You haven't answered the question. Tell me where he stays for $975.
He stays at the Fairfield. I'm not sure why it's that much, but it's.
Well,
Admittedly, the Hilton is $300 a night, so during AirVenture.
this is whatever.
Supervisor Fari.
I did see his bill, by the way.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I'd like to pursue a little bit question a little bit about the projected decrease in revenue versus the increase in the levy. You're requesting an increase in the levy of $410,000 approximately. And in the revenue column over here, which I find on page 295, it says significant changes. You're projecting a $300,000 decrease in stored vehicles projected for 2014. I assume that refers to Oshkosh Motor Truck. Is that correct?
That is correct.
I think we're all aware that Oshkosh Motor Truck has been vigorously pursuing additional contracts, new contracts, and enhanced contracts, to the point of where they ask their union that represent their employees to renegotiate a new contract. And I believe that's been approved by the union. Why would I assume they're going to require less storage? If there's something that you know that we don't, can you share that with us?
Sure. The number of vehicles that have been stored have decreased dramatically over the last year or two. What happens is a lot of these vehicles, when they're completed, they ended up either at the airport or another storage facility. Once the military then decides which ones they want and where they want it, they're shipped out. So we have no control over how many vehicles are parked on the airport. We have no control over any of them. All we know is that we're once a month we count the number of vehicles on the airport, as does Oshkosh Corporation. We collaborate with the numbers, and then we invoice them for the amount of vehicles that are parked there. So with the number of vehicles going down, being shipped out, but no more being made because the contracts are coming to an end on the current production, that's why we're seeing a significant number of decreases.
Well, if in fact next year they don't reduce the amount of storage required, or perhaps get new contracts and increase it, what are you going to do with the additional funds? Because now the taxpayers are picking up another $400,000 in your levy. So what happens then? Because this is, quite frankly, it's based on speculation. Has anybody talked to Oshkosh Motor Truck? Have you verified that their storage requirements are going to be less, other than just going out and counting them? What's the communication between?
Yeah, we do have frequent communication with them. They're at the mercy of the government also, because it said, like I said, the contracts are ending, so the number of trucks manufactured is going to come to an end shortly. The number of vehicles stored, therefore, is going to go down because they're being shipped to military installations around the country. So they have no idea when they're going to be shipped. They're just told on a daily basis, we're shipping out this vehicle, that particular vehicle, and where it's going. They have no control over it.
They're not going to continue to manufacture any of those vehicles, repair any of those vehicles, that kind of thing?
Well, they probably will, but I'm not sure what their contract is for how many vehicles they have left in production. That's something they don't discuss with us. But repair, they've never indicated to us that they're going to be repairing damaged vehicles, or they're coming back for rebuild. That's something that, for lack of a better term, it just happens. They don't know when it comes back. We don't know when it comes back.
How did you arrive at the number of 300,000? I mean, could that number be 400,000? Could that number be 200,000? Could that number be $1 million?
Based on historical numbers, as we've been watching numbers decrease, we're taking a fairly good estimate of how many we can store maximum on the airport versus the revenue we would get at the rate that we charge them.
I think I can add, too, that that was the best guess at the time we started doing the budget. I think if we were to make that guess again today, we would probably have a lower number for anticipated revenue. But what will happen is, should revenue exceed the budgeted amounts,
yes,
then money from the levy, and we've seen this in recent years, would end up going into the airport reserve because it wouldn't be used if we receive substantially more than we anticipated. I think it's more likely that this year we're going to end up with less revenue than we've currently budgeted, and the airport will be drawing down its reserve to make up the difference if that revenue is in fact lower. But a lot of it's, events that are out of our control. They might get a new contract, or the military might decide to add an additional order. They're all things out of our control and somewhat unpredictable. So we just build the budget with the best guess we have at the time we compiled it.
But now you're saying, in hindsight, that number is probably too high?
I think if anything, we probably
overestimated
the revenue. So I think it's likely that we'll be drawing some funds down from the airport's reserve.
Oh, overestimated the revenue. So you're saying that 300,000 might actually be 400,000.
The decline might be declining 400,000 instead of 3, yes.
Okay.
But again, it's an educated guess, and over time the information we get changes and gets better. But it's something that we don't know for sure. We had, in some recent years, we've actually had more revenue than what we anticipated because the drawdown on vehicles was slower.
Mm-hmm. Do you happen can somebody answer what is the current, what do you call it, airport fund balance?
It's in the book.
Yeah, but you can help me out quick if you, it's probably on what, page 20 or something, I suppose, or.
Also, a lot of those trucks are stored someplace south of town now, where they have a certain amount of miles, they have to test them every time.
Uh-huh.
And they
Yeah.
store a lot of them south of town. I don't know where, but somebody was just telling me that this weekend, that a lot of that stuff is stored south down towards Fond du Lac County, and it's within the mile range that they have to test them every day. And it works out to their benefit to store some of them there also. Plus, it was mentioned that the storage was cheaper, so I don't know what that means. But I know what it would mean in my world, but
Do you have a current fund balance?
Page 44.
Page 44?
The balance from the 2012 audit is $3,455,000.
So 2012, we don't know if what we've used in 2013, but they got, did you say 3 million?
Yeah, but the projected balance for 2013 is $2,723,000 at the end of 2013.
Okay, so apparently the county executive then and the airport director chose not to take additional funds out of that balance to cover the levy increase.
We did for 2014. We did, $250,000.
250,000.
But I didn't want to draw any more levy than that. I would rather draw down reserves if that was the case, rather than putting an additional levy subsidy into the airport at this time. And hopefully, if we start finding some tenants for the airport share of the aviation industrial park, and that's one of the goals, we would be receiving revenue in the form of lease payments for that.
Mm-hmm.
But really hard to predict whether we'll have any in place sometime in 2014 or not. I mean, not enough evidence that we will have to put that into the budget.
Okay, thank you.
Supervisor Hamlin.
Thank you. On page 303, what is a utility vehicle with a crane going to be used for? Or is that part of the ARFF 114 fire suppression system?
I'm sorry, which line item?
On page 303, the first item, the utility vehicle with a crane.
Okay, basically that's a 1.5 ton pickup truck with boxes on the back, air compressor, and then a multi-use crane that we can use for picking up flat tires or heavy objects if we have to do maintenance in the field. That's to replace another vehicle we have that's about a 35-year-old pickup truck that's starting to corrode excessively.
And then what is a Toolcat multifunctional vehicle?
Toolcat is basically a Bobcat type vehicle where you can put multiple and various tools on the front, like brooms, scoops, snow plows, post hole diggers, that sort of thing. What we intend to do with that is turn in or surplus two of the Bobcats that exist now in our inventory, acquire this one, and all the attachments to the current stuff we have now will go on this vehicle as well, too.
Okay, and then the air conditioning backup system for the control tower, is that 90,000 a good number?
Yes, that was an estimate we received from August Winter.
Thank you.
Supervisor Haig.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In regards to Supervisor Eisen's comments earlier, there's no doubt that EAA is a gem for Winnebago County. $111 million is very significant, not only to the budget of the Fox River Valley, Winnebago County, but I'm sure to the state of Wisconsin. In regards to the revenue from the airport, however, where is the money from the revenue from EAA? Where is, I mean, I see in different revenues, the land rental, things like that, but I don't see.
That would be under land rental airport. It's $100,000 a year we receive from them, $100,000. That's all we get. We don't get a revenue like a per ticket revenue. We don't get a per airplane landing fee. It's all in the agreement we have with EA that was established 16, 17 years ago. That all we get is land rental from them at a reduced rate.
So what percentage then of the land rental is EAA, and what percentage of the land rental is Oshkosh? Oshkosh Truck.
Oshkosh Truck, well, it's probably about a 10% EA, and Oshkosh is probably about 80 to 85%.
Okay, so if I'm understanding this correctly, we get $100,000 to host EAA as a county entity, and that was negotiated in a contract 16 years ago?
Correct.
Okay, is it at all possible that EAA, or is that contract up for reconsideration at any point in the next 5-10 years?
Yes.
And are we going to be looking to get a better cut of?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, and what possibly will we be looking at?
There's triggers in that lease agreement, and that, I don't remember exactly how many years are left. I think there's like 8 years left on it, but then there's also 8 years, 3 8 years leases that they can sublease it, but there's triggers in there that we can open that lease at any time. As a matter of fact, I was going to go to the Aviation Committee very shortly and suggest that we start bringing some things forward to renegotiate that. To what extent, I can't say. Originally, before we renegotiated this lease back in 96, I believe it was, we paid the EAA, or we gave them $1 to come here. Then we gave them $20,000 to be on the airport, to do anything for maintenance. Well, we took that away from where we don't pay them $1 or $20,000, and where they pay us $100,000 now. But plus it's more complicated than that. It gets more. There was land that was supposed to be purchased. The good share of it was purchased, but it was very beneficial to the county. But there are triggers in that lease where that can be opened up. And I think it will be shortly. Will the EAA going to pay their $400,000? No. But I mean, it has to be addressed, and it's going to be addressed coming up.
There is a misperception, too, that I'm glad you're giving me a chance to address it, that the EAA occurs entirely on airport land. That's not the case. Much of the land they occupy for their air show is land that they own. We only own portions of that land that they use. So there is a misperception of how much of that space is owned by the county.
With that said, how much does EAA make off a typical summer event in Oshkosh?
I don't know that.
But
I know that we couldn't, in that lease agreement, when we agreed to all this 17 whatever years ago, he said it was, when we agreed to that, we agreed not to create a landing fee, for an example. We agreed that we wouldn't create a landing fee in exchange for us paying them $20,000 and they paying us $100,000 a year. I'm just trying to give the highlights of it, but it is, it's quite complicated. But I think that for all the new board members here, that we'll bring the EAA here and Mr. Mall, and we'll do a PowerPoint presentation on the EAA lease, because it is quite beneficial to our county.
Right. I certainly appreciate the clarification. I never thought to ask that in 3 previous cycles, just because the airport has been entirely self-sufficient based on the rental agreement with Oshkosh Truck. And now that it's, up considerably on the tax levy, you start asking those types of questions, and it's...
And the worst part is, we knew that this day was going to come sometime. But the thing of it is, in the airport, with the way the FAA operates, we can't keep all that reserve money to let it weed off. I mean, there's a certain amount that the airport has to spend of that money every year, where you can't keep using every single dollar for reserves to fund future years. But I will see to it that we have a presentation on the EA lease, because it's complicated and it's quite interesting.
So at this point in time, would we be better off buying some of the capital equipment with the airport money instead of using the airport fund reserve money to pay the operations?
Well, where I know you think I'm not that way, the reason they had to buy so much equipment recently was because I was so cheap in all the years I was out there as chairman, and wouldn't let them buy stuff and would make them fix it because they had a mechanic. But I think they got an awful lot of their stuff replaced already. I don't know how they're going to use it. That committee's going to have to be creative on how they create economic development out there or something.
Thank you.
Supervisor Egan.
Chairman, this relates back to the same statements that you had made a little while ago. I'm not sure who goes ahead and decides what the Oshkosh Truck actually pays out there, but could that be renegotiated? You just said a little while ago, like down by Fond du Lac, which I had also heard it's cheaper. You see them throughout our whole county, all these trucks and this and that. Did anyone ever think about going and talking to them to see if we couldn't get some of them put back on the airport?
They've come to us recently and asked for concessions on the price. So,
and
I think that we probably are going to give them a concession on the price to retain some of the vehicles.
Okay, more than what we have, or you're saying with what we have now?
What I'm saying is that we probably are going to be charging them less per vehicle, as well as seeing some decrease in the vehicles, so that we retain storage of some vehicles. We'd like to be the last one to have the vehicles removed.
Thank you.
Supervisor Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have another question concerning the air traffic control tower backup system. That building is relatively new, 3 or 4 years old. Do any county facilities have backup systems for their air conditioning? And do any of them need it? Now, I know that $90,000 doesn't look very big in our budget, but $90,000 is a lot of money.
Well,
what is the terribly pressing need for a backup system when an air conditioning system is relatively new there? When one causes difficulty, you usually can be put back in order fairly quickly. Somebody needs to give me some assurance that that's necessary.
The air conditioning system was inadequate as it was built. But if you recall, that's like a $2 million tower, if I remember right. Maybe Peter can correct. $5 million? We didn't pay any of that. That was built for us, probably FAA expense.
100% FAA.
So while I think at the time there were some people questioning whether the air conditioning system they had put in would be adequate, you don't want to look a gift horse in the mouth, is the expression. They were building a $5 million tower and charging us nothing for it. But from its very inception, it was inadequate to keep the top of the tower cool when it was occupied by a lot of people and hot times of the year, like you would have sometimes with the EAA. So it's actually needed a backup system all along.
I have a difficult time understanding such a very expensive building having a deficiency like that. And I also have this funny idea that the only place in that place that would have to be air conditioned if something goes wrong with the whole system is one room up at the top.
That's correct.
I can't support $90,000 for a backup system. The air traffic controllers are being kept cool now fairly well, I think. They can sweat for a couple days that it takes to fix the system, too.
Hear that, Larry? Oh. Okay, you better get while the getting's good. Highway Department.
Page 308 is the start of the Highway Department budget. The Highway Department will have 78 full-time employees. That's an increase of 1 employee from 2013. And I might point out, we picked up miles and miles of additional lane miles as a result of the expansion on Highway 41 and the overpasses. So there is a significant increase in the amount of road that they plow. They also will have 2 part-time employees, the same as last year. The highlights of their budget are on page 309 and 310. Ernie Winters is in the back of the room. He's the Highway Department Director and can help answer any of your questions. And I'll even let him talk about the fact that, Highway is divided into 2 budgets, which has always been difficult for me to describe. But one budget is where we do work for the state, and we build a state for it. And the other budget is county road maintenance that we'll get to next. And that's where the county roads are maintained at county expense.
Supervisor Farley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Winters, I had a discussion with you previously, and I'd like to take this opportunity, if I can, to kind of discuss this LP tank thing. As you know, I had a resolution passing around to transfer that to your department where it would be constructed. Is it your opinion that if we didn't do that, if this board decides not to do that, that you would be pursuing an investment at your department irregardless of what the sheriff's department did? In other words, we'd have 2 units, 2 tanks. Is that correct?
I would hesitate to say that's exactly right, Supervisor Farley. We're certainly interested in compressed natural gas and LP. We're still looking at the benefits of both. With the sheriff's department plan to do an LP project, it really does make sense for us and the whole county fleet to look at how we can do that productively across the board. But I can't tell you standing here that I would pick one or the other if the sheriff weren't going to do his project.
Let me elaborate a little farther for the benefit of everyone. Of all the departments we have multiple departments with multiple vehicles, facilities, etc. Is it a probability that if the continued success which is being demonstrated by the sheriff's department with their vehicles is certainly saving a lot of money, that it would be enhanced into other departments such as facilities and other vehicles would be switched to LP? Is that a probability, you think?
Oh, I think so. If it can be proven to fit into different types of vehicles and be efficient in terms of fuel consumption and cost, it would make sense to look at it more broadly.
Thank you.
Supervisor Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Winters, the one item that sticks out here is a 52.7% increase over last year for county road maintenance. And can you explain why that had to be so high?
There's really 2 items at play here in our budget in terms of our levy request. One is the fact that our GTAs from the state of Wisconsin, the gas tax revenue we get, has been consistently going down, and we anticipate another decrease in 2014. And on top of that, the highway fund, which is sort of our revenue side, has been contributing money for a number of years to the levy side. And please, Executive, correct me if I'm wrong on that, we're asking this year to be made whole. That was $150,000 that our highway fund contributed to offset levy last year. So if you take the two items, 150, and then approximately 170,000 roughly of GTA loss, that makes up the bulk of the levy request that we're asking over and above.
You know, that was one of those reserves that, you know, you look at periodically, and for several years, maybe 8, we've been drawing money down from Highway Department to subsidize county road maintenance. But looking at their balances, there's no longer enough money there to warrant continuing to transfer some to county road maintenance. So basically, it's been subsidizing it, and it's just a discontinuance of that subsidy.
Thank you.
Well, they took it all out on the airport. No more questions.
The next item on my list is public health, and that starts on page 329. And let me just start out by saying there's been a lot of discussion about an amendment to fill in for a grant that we had budgeted the revenue in this budget, but subsequently discovered that that grant was not going to be coming through. My normal view is that if you have a grant-funded position, that position should go away when the grant funding stops. But I think this program is of such importance right now for helping young people stick with healthy lifestyles and avoid addictive drugs that I think this one is warranted to continue it for one additional year to see if we can recoup the grant in in the following year, because I would hate to discontinue the program for a year and then have to start up from scratch a year later. I think it's a worthwhile thing to continue, although I would not be making the same commitment if the federal grant is permanently discontinued, if we find out that it's not going to be renewed in subsequent years. So this budget actually contains grant revenue that we no longer anticipate receiving. So to keep the budget as it stands now, there would need to be an amendment adding revenue to this budget and probably drawing the bulk of that revenue out of the health department's reserves. The health department's charter...
There is an amendment coming with that already for $125,000, but the original grant was from the federal and everything was for how much? 800, tremendous amount of money. So I guess what is that going to do? Employ 2 people or something?
No, that was a 5-year grant.
Correct. It was $125,000 a year for 5 years.
How much?
It was $125,000 a year for 5 years.
Okay, I misunderstood it then.
The net levy for that department, the adopted budget the adjusted budget for 2013 was $1,049,206, and the executive budget for 2014 is $1,011,241.
Supervisor Eisen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have several questions. The first question is, what kind of preparedness do we have in planning that coordinates with the emergency management department, such as a epidemic or some type of major concern? Is there any standardized coordination with emergency management in respect to these major emergencies?
The health department has what's called the Public Health Emergency Response Plan, or FEP. That is actually a part of the county's emergency operations plan. And so we do work closely with emergency management. When we update our plans, it actually becomes part of the overall county plan. Certainly in terms of planning for, a pandemic influenza, other, natural disasters, we're shifting more from what years ago used to be more of a bioterrorism focus to an all hazards approach. And so we do routinely communicate with emergency management on those plans. We exercise those plans with emergency management and tailor exercises to make sure that we test parts of that plan, different parts of that plan every year.
Yeah. Thank you. On page 328, which is the organization chart, in comparison to last year's budget, what happened to the medical director in terms of, there doesn't appear to be a medical director on the chart, whereas we had one last year, and certainly there are a lot of new positions. I think there was one page that you explained all the new positions. Could you give us an update on the organization or the new organization of public health, because this is new territory for the board and for our citizens?
Sure. Thank you. And to address the first question, the absence of the medical director on the org chart for 2014 is a reflection of a change. We used Dr. Mawson is currently our medical advisor, and we contract with him to review policies and procedures and sign off on things related to clinical services like immunizations. We also use his license to order medical supplies, those that can't be ordered without one. And Dr. Mawson asked to discontinue that position at the end of this year, and we've sought out a new medical advisor on a voluntary basis. We're working out the details of that right now. The contract we had with Dr. Mawson was a small contract. I believe our expenditures on that were approximately $500 a year. That covered, his being available for us and reviewing various orders. The state provides indemnity for physicians that volunteer their services. So in other words, they don't have to have insurance provided in order to provide that service to local health departments. So what we're working on right now is an agreement on a volunteer basis with another physician that will require no payment, yet still fulfill the duties and give liability protection to that person without them having to have their own malpractice insurance be impacted by that service.
But for a county with 167,000 population, ought we have someone on our staff that we can look toward assuming responsibility and looking out for us a little bit beyond volunteerism? I appreciate the efforts and the conservation of resources in approaching that voluntary situation, but this is a big business, and there are a lot of lives that depend upon us making good decisions on their behalf. And I'm overwhelmed to see the absence of that level of professional in our absence in our organization, in particular in respect to the fact that we have grown this county health department to involve 65,000 population of the city of Oshkosh and another 25,000 for the city of Neenah. I mean, that's 90,000 population on top of that a third of the rural, of the towns, you know, I will yield to the professionals in the administration, but I just have to express my my concern that we may be penny wise and dollar foolish in serving the people's needs. So let that be known of my concerns at this point.
Thank you. Okay, Doug, here goes. I'm on this rethink thing, the grant. You said it was a 5-year grant at $125 a year?
That's correct.
Okay. But it's not 800,000, so just, it's 625. All right. So at budget time, did you did not know you were not going to get this grant?
No, we were applying for a 5-year extension, and we did not find out until September. So we prepare our budget in June and July, meet with the county executive in August, and it wasn't until after that in September that we were informed that we would not be funded for the next 5-year cycle. We were one of 4 to 6 communities, I don't know the exact number, that had applied for either new funding or continuation funding of 5 years in Wisconsin. There were, for the continuation funding only, no community in Wisconsin received that. There was only one community in the state that received new funding for a first 5-year program. That was pretty disproportionate compared to the rest of the country. We've since then, received materials back on the scoring of our application, and we can use that to shore up our application, which needs to be even better than it was the last time because of dwindling, federal allocation for this program. We did have to apply 2 years in a row. The first time we applied for Drug-Free Communities program funding, and we were certainly able to use the feedback they provided to meet the needs of the reviewers to get that award. I suspect that that we'll be in good position. I really thought we were in great position this year to receive the award, but the cutoff on the score was quite high given the limited amount of funds, and there were some things that they were looking for that we can certainly include in the next round of our application.
Okay, then on page 329, item 4, awarded a $400K Transform Wisconsin grant. This is a 2013 accomplishment, and I know it's probably not that big a deal, but what did you use that for?
The Community Transformation Grant, which is what this is a grant funding source that's made available via the Affordable Care Act through the Centers for Disease Control. The CDC allocates monies to states, and we competitively applied for a portion of those funds. We were one of 4 communities that were funded at this level, the highest level that they awarded at the end of, at the beginning of 2013, end of 2012. And that grant is very prescriptive in what those funds can be used for. And those funds are currently being used related to tobacco use, and particularly reducing tobacco use in multi-unit housing. Also for a farm-to-school program where we bring together schools and local farmers to try to utilize produce locally in our schools. And then the third portion of that is and it's escaping me right now, but it's a nutrition, obesity prevention type initiative. And so that grant is for 2 years, for this year and for next year, and that funds a regular position and funds a half-time temporary position. And in addition to that, we support the work of the coalition, both this community transformation grant and the drug-free communities grant, with AmeriCorps members that we have placed in our agency. We pay a small amount to have those AmeriCorps members placed in our agency, and they provide us support, and they're paid through the AmeriCorps program, not by the county.
What is the worst scenario if we don't fund that 120? Give me the worst scenario if we don't fund that 125,000.
Sure. Probably worst case scenario is that we would probably not fund one of the positions that we have in the budget that's currently not filled, so we wouldn't fill a position. We would transfer those funds to this position. I think it's a high priority. I think there's a lot of attention, and I think we need to take advantage of the community awareness that's going on right now. Certainly, there's a lot of attention on heroin, and we certainly want to be a part of that. So we'd have to reprioritize within the department to make it happen.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not going to really talk about the budget. I want to talk about 2013. Thank you, Doug, and everyone else who started this consolidation of our health department, Oshkosh, and City Neenah. I've talked to numerous of people, and I haven't heard one negative thing. So whatever you people have been doing, I just want to say thank you. That's about it. Thank you.
Doug, I would like to hear you talk about over the year, how things have worked out with this consolidation. As far as what Supervisor Finch just said, everything seems to be going good. How do you feel about it? Is everything going your way? Is everything working?
I believe the consolidation, has been successful. I believe that many of our programs are better as a result. We've been able to take the best of what was happening in Neenah, and the best of what was happening in Oshkosh, and the best of what was happening here in the county, and pull those things together. I think the staff members are working. The professional staff are working together very well as a team. I think we've got a pretty good pool of staff, a great pool of staff, I should say. There are some challenges that remain. We still have a separated WIC and public health program up in Neenah. We'd certainly like to see those areas come together. We can provide better service, particularly in prenatal care coordination. We could find some efficiencies in staffing, I think, if we were able to bring those staffs together like we have here in Oshkosh. But overall, I think that we've been able to provide a wider range of services, more consistent services. We've been able to partner extremely well with the community, whereas in the past we've had 4 health departments trying to partner with the healthcare systems in the community, and working, doing some similar functions. We've been able to have less points of contact for them, and more clarity in who does what.
I know there was a big concern about the service to the rural citizens of Winnebago County. Is everybody happy out there?
The services to the towns has remained largely unchanged. So I don't know of any complaints as a result of consolidation and services that we have not been able to continue to provide.
Okay. Thanks, Doug.
Supervisor Haig.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I apologize if I missed this, but what did the health department spend $217,000 of fund balance on this past year?
Chuck, if you want to go ahead and take that.
That was actually returning part of the balance from the before they were consolidated. There was a fund balance for the health department before the consolidation, and the objective there was to return that to those municipalities that were in public health prior to the consolidation over a 5-year period. And that was the portion that we returned last year.
Thank you. I recall that. In regards to the fund balance itself, just over 900,000, is that?
Is that a combination
mainstream?
of the new and the old?
No, is
Or-
that, should a health department have a fund balance of over $900,000?
I don't think they have a $900,000 fund balance. Where is that?
Page 44?
It does. The reason it's that high is because you have two separate fund balances, one for the entity prior to the consolidation and one for after. Once the one for the balance prior to consolidation is fully distributed, it'll probably be closer to 500, 400 or 500. That's a reasonable fund balance. If they have a major epidemic or something, they could need major funding to cover it.
So you're saying a $500,000 fund balance is acceptable? I'm
reasonable.
not seeing a $500,000 here, though. I'm seeing over 900,000. That's why I asked.
Like I said, that's because there's the balance prior to consolidation and the balance after. The balance prior to consolidation is being distributed, so that'll drop down. And you can see that at the end of 2014, where it's projected to be 620, and it'll drop down even further the next year as more of that balance from the pre-consolidation days is distributed.
I do see that. I see the balance as of 12/31/13, and then I see the deficit during the calendar year of 2013. So it just seems to me that 910,000 is a balance after the 217 has been distributed.
It is, but if you go over to 214, another 290 of that is going to be distributed.
What's happening there is that we had this balance from the prior service area, and we wanted it to go back to those individuals. However, if we gave it back all at once, that would drop our allowable levy, and we wouldn't be able to recoup the next year after it was already rebated. So we're slicing that into 5 pieces and rebating it a slice at a time over 5 years. So that balance looks quite high now, but much of that 900,000 you're seeing, that's a correct amount, but much of that represents the old fund that's being returned to the old service area over a 5-year period. I think 2014 will be the second or third year of that? Third year. So you'll see that balance coming down, and eventually all of the old reserve will be gone, and we'll have just the new reserve. Which I'm thinking is more like, what's the balance, like 200 and something, wasn't it?
At the end of last year, it was about 250, 240, 250.
258.
Thanks.
Yeah. And if some sort of amendment is done to continue the funding of this program, the Rethink program, basically, or the health, isn't it Healthy Communities?
So
grant was the
drug-free communities.
Drug-free communities, that would draw that balance down as well.
Supervisor Eisen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Glynn, at the last time the county board took a tour of the Parkview Pavilion, we found the health department, public health department, in a very substandard condition. Since that time, with the addition of the Otter Street Administration Building, we've moved the public health department to that new building. I know it's been a process of adjustment, and certainly with the consolidation with Oshkosh, an additional adjustment. Could you bring us up to date with how things are settling in with the department at the new facility? I think this is something which the board would appreciate, and certainly our citizenry would want to get a better view of what's gone on with public health over the transition?
Sure. We did a lot of planning prior to occupying the new space. We certainly tried to incorporate the anticipation that we may have a consolidation and factored that into the planning. So when we set up the space, we tried to set it up such that we would expect an influx of employees to occur. I have all the employees that were from the former Oshkosh Health Department and from the County Health Department are all co-located in that space. We've had some, obviously we've had some challenges in balancing out who is where, who fits where, and we may need to do a little bit of rebalancing on that floor, some cubicle reconstruction, that sort of thing, as time goes on. But we have adequate space. We're tight, but we certainly have adequate space. And I think the biggest challenge, remains with the consolidation. Still remains that we haven't been able to consolidate the staff up on the north end of the county, and so we're looking forward to doing that. We're in a 3-year lease with the city. The health department on the north end occupies City Hall, the former location of the Neenah Health Department. So we have staff there. We also have staff in the Neenah Human Services building, and that's where our WIC program is up on the north end. And so we look forward, at the end of the 3 years post consolidation, which is just a little less than 2 years from now, and we've already had some preliminary discussions about how to do that. We'll continue to work on that and have those staff hopefully working out of the same office space wherever that may be in a couple of years from now.
Now, did we shut down the Neenah office?
The Neenah office is still being utilized. We're now renting that space from the city of Neenah.
So rather than having it at the Human Services building in Neenah, the public health is continued at the Neenah office site?
Yep, for now. We'd certainly like to see those staff together. We can get some efficiency from that, and we can provide better service. But for the time being, that's how it's set up.
Yeah. Now that we've discussed somewhat the public health settling into the administration building, I wonder if the county executive could address the broader picture of the settling into the Otter Street administration building. This was passed by, or didn't bring it up at the time we were discussing the overview of the budget, but is there still a lot of empty space in that building? I think we were only about 60% or 50% occupied.
There is a lot of available space on Otter Street, and there's been one presentation to the board about the possibility of consolidating the courts, including those that are currently in the public safety building, into this building, and moving some non-court related items out of this building and into the Otter Street building. That got a pretty mixed reaction from the board when that was presented to the board. But as part of the efforts to add additional safety to the courthouse, it's quite possible that there'll be a second presentation of that, and that some departments that are currently in the county courthouse, such as Register of Deeds, Treasurer, that those items might move into the Otter Street, but that's still a determination to be made by the county board, because that would require a fairly large capital project to complete that process.
Was there any thinking about, I think we viewed a large room which would accommodate 36 supervisors. Has there been any scuttlebutt about moving the board to, that wouldn't have to enter a secure facility such as the tightened security expected once the courthouse is remodeled and all the courts are brought back to the building?
That could happen someday, but this room works well for the board, and I think it would be a pretty substantial expense to build out a space in the other building to accommodate board meetings. but it's not an impossibility.
Thank you.
Supervisor Parry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I might recap some of the comments made by Supervisor Gabbert, I'm looking at page 329, and I'm looking for some clarification. It says on number 4 that the Health Department was awarded a $4,000 Transform Wisconsin grant for Rethink, and I assume that is the same group we're talking about with the $125,000 budget request. So if I interpret this correctly, and based on what I believe the health director stated, they currently have $400,000 to use. They have employees hired, and that supplements their salaries or pays for their salaries. The $125,000 is in addition to the $400,000 the county's already received. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So then the $125,000 is to hire an additional employee?
No.
Okay. Go ahead.
The Community Transformation Grant was a $400,000 award over the period of 2 years and a few months. That grant requires staffing to accomplish the objectives of that grant. That was a grant that was awarded to us after we had the Drug-Free Communities Grant in place. The funds for DFC, or Drug-Free Communities, have now lapsed. They're no longer available for us over this next year. Our application was unsuccessful. And in order to continue the work that's a part of Drug-Free Communities, which is primarily addressing substance abuse in youth, so the work that we're doing in that area is what's in jeopardy.
Then would you tell me what number 8 is applied for? And I'm reading once again from page 329.
Yep, that's
a 5-year renewal of a Drug-Free Communities Grant?
Yep, we did put an application forth this year, and that application was not funded. We also applied for another grant with the University of Wisconsin Oshkosh to address underage alcohol consumption in Middle Village and in campus area. That was also not funded.
So then, in summary, Rethink has received a grant of $400,000 based on the line item from number 4.
Yes, the health department, or our community coalition, yes. Rethink, which is a project of the health department, did receive funding for the community transformation grant program, which is completely separate from Drug-Free Communities, last year, and we continue that work through next year.
Okay, thank you. That helps clarify my question.
Supervisor Olson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Doug, I refer you to page 329, number 11, established Acorn Fund with Oshkosh Area Community Foundation for future Rethink Coalition funding. Can you explain that?
Sure. The part of the premise of Rethink is to engage the community in addressing issues of importance regarding health in our community. The health department is not in a position to solve all of our community problems. Health is a multifaceted problem. It's impacted by, a number of socioeconomic factors. In order to move the needle on our health issues and the health of our overall community, we need participation, from business, from other community partners, other nonprofits, and so when we created Rethink, it was to engage the community, to provide them, a forum to bring forth those things that they can work on. It was a way for us to engage multiple partners, do some collaborate together to provide some focus and direction so that we can all work on problems together at the same time. And because this is a program that we like to feel is owned by the community, we approached the Community Foundation, knowing that grant funds will eventually dry up, to establish a fund that over time we would hope would help supplement the funding for this community coalition. And so we've established what's called an ACORN fund with donations, and hope to, over time, turn that into a regular fund at the Oshkosh Community Foundation for people to fund, and for it to fund community activities related
How
to
much
health.
is currently in that fund?
It's an ACORN fund until it's $10,000. I think currently there's less than $1,000 in it, and it'll take us a while to build that up.
Thank you.
Supervisor Egan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Doug, I think you better take a minute and just explain again a little bit more on that $400,000 grant and why we still sitting on that committee, why that $125,000 is still so important to your committee there to get that. Because right now, if I was sitting here and didn't know any different, I would think, well, geez, you got $400,000. Why do we need any more?
Sure, and thanks for that opportunity. The Drug-Free Communities Program and the Community Transformation Grant Program are two entirely separate funded programs with different objectives that we need to that we identify partially by prescription from either from SAMHSA or from the CDC each year, that we have to write a budget for separately each year. Each of those programs requires a substantial labor component, a staffing component, in order to complete those objectives that are there. So while we lump those together in Rethink, the reason we do that is because we can benefit from utilizing the structure that we have in place, that community engagement structure and the committee structure that we have in place to take advantage of supporting the various committees that exist. And so there's a variety of committees, some of which are focused on drug-free communities, such as substance abuse prevention, and those committees that are more directed by the community transformation grant funding, which are typically those that are nutrition related or obesity related or healthy recreational opportunity related. So while we have more than one funding source to the health department, and that we apply those funding sources to help run the Rethink Coalition, they're not monies that really can cross. We can't use CTG funding for youth substance abuse activities and the other way around. And so the staff that we have that are running our Rethink Coalition and that are working under these grants are funded separately, and we track all of their activities separately. If we don't have Drug-Free Communities grant funding, we lose the staffing that we have in the coalition that worked on that program. I hope that helps.
Supervisor Warnke.
Doug, how is this Affordable Care Act going to affect the Public Health Department? They're requiring everyone to have health insurance, which is going to kind of cut down on some of the things that you do at public health. Is this not right?
It's had some impact already. It's had an impact on the number of people we see for immunizations. That has gone down quite a bit. The premise here is that individuals will have access to preventative services through their medical care providers and won't need to rely on public health to provide those. However, our vaccines for children program remains intact. We don't do much in terms of flu vaccinations in the community because they're just so available elsewhere. In the future, we're certainly working with Human Services, economic support to help spread the word. We're working with the Living Healthy Community Clinic in Fox Cities, to try to encourage enrollment for those that are eligible, those that are coming off of, so those that were on the wait list for Badger Care that are now going to be newly eligible. That are below 100% of the poverty level, and those that are newly eligible for enrolling in the exchange. So there hasn't been a significant impact except for a reduction in immunizations so far, but with that, we would not have received the, let's say, the Community Transformation Grant funding without the provisions that have been made in the Affordable Care Act. And that's where we're really transitioning. We're trying to transition to more prevention in health as opposed to treatment after the fact.
But you're not going to notice it now. I mean, the law itself has not even gone into effect, and I don't think it's going to go into effect until March 31st of 2014. But I think that you're going to see a change in it because people are going to be required to have health insurance.
Yeah, and actually, I mean, there's many portions of the Affordable Care Act that are already in place. It's just the insurance portion that's getting the attention right now that doesn't go into effect until January 1. And the Public Health Department only provides a limited amount of actual clinical services. Most of the work that we do is not duplicative of going to a health clinic outside of immunizations, TB skin testing, a few of those programs, and that's that's a fraction of what we do as a public health agency. So we look forward to more emphasis on prevention and our role with that, which is the biggest impact it'll have on public health. But in terms of clinical services, it really, for us, for medical clinical services, the impact is fairly minor.
Thanks, Doug.
Okay, thank you. Human Services.
Human Services is on page 360 of your budget. There's a chart of accounts, or chart of employees, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I'll do veterans first, and then it'll just take a second to get.
You want to do veterans? Okay. We'll go to veterans then on
slip.
page 353. 353.
Veterans is 353.
Yeah, and there's 4 full-time positions budgeted for 2014 and 2 part-time positions, the same as in 2013. The Bob Stone, the Director of Veteran Services, or the Veteran Service Officer, is in the back of the room and can help with the questions. The chart of significant changes is on page 368. And their 2013 adopted budget was $359,383. The 2014 executive proposal is $370,512.
Okay, Human Services.
Human Services is on page 360. Bill Topel is in the back of the room. He's the Director of the Human Service Department and will help answer any questions. The summary of significant changes is several pages, starting about 3, let's see, those accomplishments. Well, I think it's in the goals and objectives, between 370 and 374. The department is budgeted for 246 full-time positions for 2014. That's an increase of 1 position in the full-time area. And budgeted for 22 part-time positions. That's an increase of 3 part-time positions for the budget. The levy for 2013 was $17,799,000. The executive budget proposal for Human Services is a small decrease down to $17,762,000.
Supervisor Haig.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In regards to Human Services, I get questions periodically, and I'm hoping that I'm not nearly as educated in the human services portion of the budget as I should be. Somebody could help me locate where there are such things as low-income housing or those types of things. Is that in this portion of the budget, or is that?
No, and that's actually outside the responsibility of the county. The low-income housing is through the Winnebago County and Oshkosh Housing Authority. The name makes it sound like it's part of the county, but they are not. That's an independent organization that does not operate on county funds. It operates on HUD grants, federal monies. However, the county does appoint some of the members of that board.
Thank you.
Supervisor Eisen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Topol, on page 375 in the budget narrative highlights, we see a progression from 2010 to 2014. And I recall when we set up the long-term care district, we migrated about 8 or 9 positions from human services to that long-term care district. Today, we're back where we started before we moved the people out of the department. Could you help us, help the board, and help the citizens of Winnebago County understand what's transpired since that downsizing of the department, that we're back again with that same number of employees?
Sure. While it's true that we did have a reduction in staff that went to the long-term care district, that other positions, we've also had some other changes in the department. The state has changed up some things in our economic support area. They have rearranged some things. So what ended up happening was the folks that went to the long-term care district, they're no longer on our table of organization. But over the past couple of years, last year we had some changes, some additions to our staff in other areas of the department, which were in last year's budget, which I can't really name them right at this point. But in terms of what happens is we look for reductions in our staff. We also have to look to provide services that the state wants us to provide in other areas. So in some instances, we, rather than having our own contracted staff, we reduced some contracted costs, but then we had some of our own staff doing those formerly contracted areas. So I'm not being very specific because I wasn't prepared for the question, and I could do a much thorough job of answering it.
Have we added
case.
any employees to accommodate the need to spread the word and assist with the Affordable Care, Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act?
Right. We've added a couple of staff, which actually I came to you a few months ago in order to ask you for an increase in a couple of staff that are going to go actually for a period of about 2.5 years, as you might remember, just a couple of months ago. So those are new in our table of organization. And we've added some temporary part-time individuals that are not on our table of organization, but we've added them to assist people with their difficulties getting on the website. And of course, we aren't having much more success with that than most of the nation. But we do have them available, and we've added some support there. We regularly make changes in our table of organization. Some things are things that we feel aren't in the best location, that we need to move to a different location of the budget, so, or a different division perhaps, and we've done some of those changes. But ultimately what the county executive requires of us is to inform him of the changes we're making, and then how does it affect budgetarily, whether we're gaining or losing staff, in terms of how it impacts the budget. As long as it doesn't impact the budget negatively, we can move some of these positions around. So when it comes to a table of organization, we may end up having the same number of full-time equivalents, but what you don't see behind the scenes is that we're making adjustments and where positions aren't necessarily where we'd like them to be the most efficient, to help county folks, we try to make recommendations to change it to other areas of the department. So that's essentially what we're doing right now is in this budget, we weren't looking to add staff that added additional county tax levy. We were trying to make adjustments within our current staff size to correctly adjust and make sure that those positions that are most important for county constituents, for them to have the services that they need, without us having to add staff or program.
Could you get us up to date prior to the demolition of the Parkview Pavilion? There was a program under Human Services that was called Second Chance, which was housed at that facility, involving young people and getting them on the right track, perhaps young people with some disability and involvement with law enforcement. I recall that they were relocated to our Otter Street, one of the buildings on that same property. Could you, comment in respect to progress in that particular area? I do see that under the contractual services, you have listings of many programs, but I kind of miss an element of a programmed budget, such as the sheriff has, that gives us a breakout of the functions of the Human Services Department. Would you be able to give us some kind of up-to-date or comment in respect to Second Chance at this time?
Sure. Second Chance, real quick. Second Chance is still our program. It is it's on the Otter Street campus. It's behind the former Oshkosh by Gosh building, and it was renovated by the county. And it is a cooperative program between ourselves and the Oshkosh Public School District, who provides the instructors for the program. We actually provide a social worker, school social worker position that they hire, but we provide the dollars for, and also I believe an aide. And then of course the county provides the building and all of the costs of maintaining the building. So it's really a cooperative shared program. These are kids who would not be able to make it in the regular public schools. There are kids, so the kids that are referred there are Winnebago County children who need an alternative educational site that is both educational and also geared toward helping them keep their behaviors under control. We still have the same amount of kids referred. It's in the teens. I'm thinking 15 to 20 is typically what the class size is. We make good use of it. It's going very well. Everybody seems to be very happy with it, and we're very appreciative that the county provided that space as an alternative to Parkview when Parkview Pavilion was scheduled to be torn down.
Thank you.
Supervisor Singstuck.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In terms of tax levy, Human Services is the second largest in the county at $18 million in round figures. The Sheriff's Department is the highest at $19 million. But I'd like to point out that during it's projected that over the last 4 years, Human Services has come in at a reduction in the tax levy each year. Thank you.
Okay. That's all. You lucked out. I guess about the only thing they can do if they want to address you is they'd have to take a percentage of the total budget because they can't comprehend what's in there. We will reconvene at 8:30 tomorrow morning.